the end of the day, your riches come on the legacy that you leave for your child or children. Just be present, be in the moment, understand your value and worth. Don't let anybody tell you different, and love on your kid.
Welcome to the Fathering Strong podcast, where we connect, engage, and empower fathers to be the best dads they can be for their families and communities. And now, your hosts are Bruce Stapleton and Pastor Eli Williams.
Well, hello, everyone. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. I'm Eli Williams, and Bruce is the guy behind the curtain there. We are just excited to be with you again today. I'm a husband, a father, a grandfather, an author and pastor, and president of Urban Light Ministries, which is the nonprofit that powers Fathering Strong. On the podcast today is my friend, Harold Howard. Harold is a family man. He's an executive with Talbert House in Cincinnati, Ohio. And in his spare time, he's also the president of the Ohio Practitioners Network for Fathers and Families. So we've got lots we can talk about today. Welcome, Harold.
Good to be with you, Eli. I hope all is well up north. It's always a pleasure anytime I can speak with you.
Now, don't say up north because somebody might think I'm in Michigan, which would be horrible. I'm just kidding. We do welcome you. And we like to start with your fatherhood story. Before we get too much into the other things, I like to give people some insight into who you are. So tell us about your growing up. What was your relationship with your father like?
Absolutely. First and foremost, I feel like I was incredibly blessed, and I hit the father lottery with my own dad. So I am one of 5 kids. It's 3 boys and 2 girls. I am child number 4 of 5. And so, always had my father involved. My father is a tremendous role model. He led through his work. He didn't, say a whole lot. But when he spoke, it was always powerful. He spent over 30 years doing maintenance work here in Cincinnati with Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority. He got up every day, went to work, didn't complain. Provided for us, just an incredible role model, disciplinarian, but also a nurturer. I think about today when we really are promoting, fathers as nurturers. I mean, he was providing that at an early age for me. And so, my life journey has always been about, not disappointing him in any type of way. The discipline was one thing, but, I never wanted to disappoint my father. I would say in my relationship with him, when I really understood in totality the impact that he had on my life, or a better way of saying it is when I finally got it as a son, was the day he dropped me off for my first day of college. I was the first one in my family to go off to college, and he dropped me off. Everybody left the room. Everybody was excited. They had a sibling going to college, or a son going to college, or a nephew, whatever that may be. And he simply just came back in the room and just said, "Hey, if this is not for you, I'll come pick you up." And, words matter. And, for me back then, it took all the weight of the world off of having to perform, having to be the first to do whatever. It just took all that weight off. And, obviously it was the launching pad to me getting my bachelor's degree and going on to get my master's degree. But I always tell that story and I still get goosebumps because that's when I understood just how really fortunate and blessed I was as a son to have him as a father.
Wow. So that is a great experience. I mean, you did hit the lottery. Very, very good. You're blessed. So how did that play into the way in which you work with fathers?
It's interesting enough. Some of you, the audience may know Calvin Williams. He's very influential in the fatherhood field here in the state of Ohio. And I would even say, nationally as well. And so Calvin hired me back in 2003. And, I was fresh out of school, was playing. I just got off playing 1 year of professional basketball. And it just wasn't like just this passion of mine anymore. And I really wanted to get my career started. And so interviewed for a position with then the Service United for Mothers and Adolescents Fatherhood Project. And Calvin was the director. And, as he will tell you, it definitely had a lot of rawness in me. But ultimately, he gave me an opportunity. And when he hired me, what he told me is, I'm hiring you because what I heard from you is that you were a good son and you had an incredible father. And that can serve as role models for the fathers that we're trying to reach out in our community. And I've always carried that. And that to me is, always been a privilege to be a servant. And more particularly to fathers and men. We have a lot of men in our community that they just need some assistance. They need help. They need people who care, people who are passionate about what's going on in their lives. And I've never taken that lightly throughout my career as a servant. And I would say that it's probably one of the greatest honors is to be able to be a servant within our community.
No doubt about that. And now you are a father. Talk about becoming a dad.
Absolutely. So, again, ironically enough, I started my fatherhood career prior to becoming a father. And so my first daughter was born in 2004. And, I always tell people, I was in my 20s, and if your 20s was like my 20s, I had a lot going on, maybe involved in things I shouldn't have been involved in, taking risks that I probably should not have taken risks around. But, becoming a father, it slows you down. You value things a little bit more. Time becomes more precious. Relationships become everything. And in particular, a relationship with your child. And so I often say, and I still say this as a 46-year-old man today, that, my daughter saved my life. Everything became just that much more precious and valuable to me. And she came at the right time in my life, just to slow me down a little bit. And so we've been locked, hand and toe since then. And so, today she is 20 years old, or she'll be 20 in 17 days. And so she's a sophomore at Central State, University. And then my wife and my wife had her oldest daughter, who I've been involved in her life since she was 3 years old. So I raised her, and, that's my daughter. We don't necessarily, I don't think we've ever used the word stepdaughter or bonus daughter. It's just my child. I mean, I raised her, I changed her pamper. I bathed her. I took her to doctor's appointments. That is my child. Right. And so, and then, in 2010, my wife and I, our youngest daughter, Malia, entered the world. She's 14, a freshman at Purcell Marion High School here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so, as you can see, women run my world. I have 3 daughters and a wife. And I would say what I've learned to do is just say, okay, and just walk away. So, but nevertheless, it's something to having so many women involved in your life. It's something to have, 3 daughters that you get to raise and mold and grow with. Right. And so it's been incredibly a blessing. My wife had asked me, in the past, do you ever regret that you didn't have a boy? I don't regret it at all. I've lived the life as a son. I've lived the life as a boy. I have nephews. The ironic part about all of that is my wife and I, early on when we were courting, she gained full custody of then her 8-year-old nephew, who is now 25 years old and in the Army Reserve. He's down in San Antonio now. He's going to be doing another tour in Iraq here soon. And so that was my boy. And so, I've been fully blessed to be able to raise my 3 daughters, but, also my nephew as well. And so, it's just been a blessing. And, I don't take any of that for advantage. I mean, they all mean the world to me. And they're my why. I do what I do every day and try to live my life with integrity.
So you had an excellent experience growing up with a present and nurturing father. And then you are a father of 2, I think I heard you say.
3.
3. Mm-hmm. And you work with fathers. And I do understand that you did get a promotion. And so are you still directly work with fathers, or is that something in your previous position? Explain that to me.
Well, let me just start off by saying I will always be in love with the fathers and doing work with the fathers and working within the Fatherhood Project. So I am in year 3 of a transition from what we call here at Talbot House our community care service line, in which our Fatherhood project falls. I transitioned over 3 years ago over to our corrections service line. So working with individuals who are returning from, jail, prison, are caught up in the legal system in some type of way. And so, that work is equally rewarding. But, for the first, 15 and a half years of my professional career, it was, all dedicated to doing work with fathers and families. And, again, it's self-servingly has taught me a lot about, how I parent, being involved in the Fatherhood project. It's also taught me, how to be a better husband as well. And so, while the guys felt like maybe I was leaning in them and helping them, grow and develop, they were also helping me grow and develop too. And, to me, that's the beauty of life, is the opportunity each and every day to learn something new. You're not living if you're not learning. And so, yeah, I mean, and, we've done some incredible things to grow the Talbot House Fatherhood Project over that 15-year period. So those services transitioned over to Talbot House on July 1st of 2008. And at that time, we were probably serving anywhere between 80 and 100 dads a year. We had an operating budget that was about $160,000. And fast forward to today, we serve well over 600 fathers a year. We have an operating budget that's over upwards of $500,000, closer to $500,000. And it continues to grow. And, I would say the great thing is we've always been very, very responsive to the community need. It's not just, smart people up, disengaged from services saying this is what people need. We ask people what they need. And then we tailor the services based off of those needs. We've been able to grow a lot of relationships within Hamilton County, the city of Cincinnati, and then in our regional sites where, we have, great relationships with Hamilton County Jobs and Family Services, and more particularly child support and children's services, so that, we can make those direct linkages when a father has child support issues and or he has some custody or visitation issues. And I would say we've done the same with the juvenile court system, where we've partnered with, the magistrates along the way to make sure that they first and foremost know who we are. And anytime we show up with integrity, and our word is everything. So if we're advocating on behalf of a father, he has done what needed to be done to have access to his child or children.
So let's talk about that a little more. So you provide a fatherhood course, I would say, but if that's correct, but you also provide other services, and all that's coordinated through case management. Is that a good way of putting it? Explain how you work with a father.
Yeah, so we offer a full array of services. What's always been important to us is everything has to start with case management. Because for us, it's about sustainability. What's in it long term for the father? It's great to give father a bus card, or give him some food, or give him a tip to a job. It's another thing when you can develop his job readiness skills so that he can now go find a career job that then allows him to pay his child support, allows him to get transportation, allows him to get an apartment. It's also something to be said about understanding that oftentimes our fathers get to these situations because of life situations. And so, trauma and PTSD and things like that, that's real. And the reality of it is if we don't address that, everything else is we just addressing the symptoms. So, we're gonna first and foremost have a open and honest conversation with a father, because we're gonna try to build trust. And our tips and tricks have always been give them a win while you got them. And so when they come in for intake and they're saying, I'm behind on my child support, I'm going to use that as an example. So let's get them connected with child support before they walk out of your facility. Let's make sure that we can give them good, accurate information about how much they owe, how much is arrears, how much goes to the mom, who their case manager is, how to communicate with their case manager. Because if they never come back, they've gained some new skill set that's going to take them a long way. And that's really how you build the trust. You got to give them wins right away. I understand that every program is about, paperwork has to be completed. I get that. But you have to figure out how to have that natural blend of doing the paperwork or the administrative work along with giving them wins right away. Because that also bleeds into them feeling good about themselves. And who doesn't, when you feel good about something, you're going to keep going back to feel good about it. And hopefully they'll keep coming through our doors. And so it's case management. If through the assessment, if they need, SUD services or substance abuse services, we connect them. That's one of the great things about Talbot House is we have other service lines that have these unique skill sets. So we have a whole addiction service line that we can refer father. If it's mental health, we have a whole mental health service line that we can refer the father. And so we start, truly helping them understand the full array of what's being presented to us, because oftentimes they come to us for one centralized issue. It could be child support, it could be custody. But the reality of it is if we can start filling their cup in all these other areas, it really leads to a dynamic individual who then becomes a dynamic parent. And then can, pour into others' cup. And so that's what we're about. So it's case management for us, it's parenting education, it's co-parenting services, it is employment services, is kind of, where we really focus. And then we are blessed enough that we do have a legal service provider, so an attorney that's on staff. And in those situations where attorneys are needed, they're able to lean in and assist and help our fathers.
Yeah, Talbot House is a model of how to provide services to parents, particularly fathers. That's more than just providing a fatherhood class, but you wrap around them with all the essential services that a father needs to get on his feet and to move forward in his life to be the best father he can be. Of your fatherhood curriculum, what is your particular favorite when it comes to the educational services you provide to fathers?
You saying what curriculum do I prefer?
Yeah.
I like Nurturing Fathers. I mean, we've used Nurturing Fathers going back to 2003 or 2003. And I really like that because it really is about nurturing. It's also about preventing violence. And, oftentimes our fathers do come to us with some level of anger, anger for systems, anger for their parenting partner, anger for how they felt they've been, wronged by society. And I think oftentimes they don't always understand how those things parallel with the way they parent, the way they interact with their parenting partner, or how they interact with, just society in general. And so really what that gives us an opportunity to do is help them understand that you're going to go through a wide range of emotions and feelings. And, we don't need to fight those emotions and feelings because they're natural. But what we do with that is what's important. And so, how do we teach them how to cope, right? How to manage, those feelings, and so that's really what it's about for us. We all get angry. It's just what we do with that, right? And so we get a chance to really nurture the person who then is going to have the task of going out in the community and nurturing their kids and nurturing their relationships. And I'll use the word relationships very broad. But it really does break down the individual and help that individual do a lot of reflection. And more importantly, why I really love it is it goes back to that little boy within. We are a product of our upbringing. It doesn't define who we are, but it is a part of who we are. And so, what do we do with that? What do we do with those wounds? What do we do with the good stuff? What do we do with the bad stuff? And how do we mold that into the person that we want to be? I always say that, and it's a known fact that, men mature later than women. And a lot of that is because women, they are quick to get in tune with their emotions and their feelings before we are, where sometimes we come out the womb programmed. I mean, you don't cry when you fall, you don't do this, you don't do that. And the reality of it is if I'm hurt, I'm hurt. And you don't understand it until you mature as an individual. And sometimes we then take some of those those life learning lessons, and we push that onto our kids, good, bad, or indifferent. And so really what Nurturing Fathers give us an opportunity to do is reflect on who we are, what we've been through, and who we want to be, most importantly, going forward.
An excellent program. I enjoy Nurturing Fathers as well, written by Mark Perlman out of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
This has been very instructive, and we're going to take a break, Harold, and then when we come back, let's talk a bit about your involvement with OPNFF, what that is, and what you're seeing as a future for that movement. I'm Eli Williams. This is Harold Howard, and this is the Fathering Strong podcast. More with him after this break.
We dads and father figures need each other. We need a safe, non-judgmental place to share our stories, challenges, heartaches, and joys. Fathering Strong is just such a place. A new online community of connected, engaged, and empowered fathers. Learn more at www.fatheringstrong.com.
Harold Howard is my guest today on the Fathering Strong podcast. Among other things, he is the chairman, president of Ohio Practitioners Network for Fathers and Families. OPNFF provides networking, training, resources, research, public policy updates, and other supports to father and family serving practitioners across the state of Ohio. I'm privileged to be a member of the board of OPNFF. Harold is the president, and we've got over 700 organizational and individual members on our mailing list. And it's great to be in such a great position to help fathers and to get to work with others who are dedicated to serving fathers like Harold Howard. So that's kind of the big picture of OPNFF. What would you like to add to that?
No, you did a really good job, Eli, of explaining it. I think, I am incredibly privileged to be a part of the Ohio Practitioners Network for Fathers and Families. I've been involved for over, 10 years. On our board, we have well over 200 years of fatherhood experience that uniquely positions us to be a voice, for the state of Ohio on what fatherhood is truly about. I think just in general, when we think about fatherhood work, we're still trying to define it. We're past year 20 of it. And the good thing and, why it is good to be a part of the board is, we get to really help be a trendsetter within the state of Ohio and nationally, because a lot of people look to us for advice around a practitioners network or even the Commission on Fatherhood about what the work needs to really entail. And so we've been able to accomplish a lot going back to 1998 when we originally got started around, legislation, public policy. But again, we've also been able to forge some really good relationships with, state entities that matter, that intersect with, fathers and families. I think more particularly with Ohio Jobs and Family Services, we've done a lot of good work with them, throughout the years. And we've been able to really move the needle when we think about just the work in general across the state of Ohio. I talked a little bit about what we do at Talbot House. One of the things we've really been focused on within the Practitioners Network is really helping organizations define what true fatherhood work is. And I think we, have done a really good job. I think back to during the pandemic, when everybody was isolated, we held a couple of events where we brought fathers together, really to make them feel good about themselves through listening, right? Everything starts with listening. You don't have to have the answers. If you listen long enough, sometimes people get their own answers. And so, we were able to execute that. Obviously, we've partnered throughout the years with the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood on holding summits that I would say have been very impactful and influential throughout the state of Ohio. And again, I'm going to say throughout the country, because oftentimes we do get folks from other states who come in to participate in the summit. And then, the Mobilization project. So, it's 88 counties and Director Kim Dent's mission is for all 88 counties to have some level of a fatherhood mobilization. And that has been a direct partnership with the Ohio Practitioners Network for Fathers and Families going back, I believe, to 2011. So we have been able to initiate at a minimum, and I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but I'm going to say I think it's 17 counties have been through the mobilization project. And Director Dent, if you listen to this later and I'm off on a number, I apologize ahead of time. But again, I mean, that's impact, right? It's just not us sitting in our silos and our individualized counties. It's taking the wealth of resources collectively from across the entire state and making sure that we share that with, startups, existing programs to make sure that, again, the end user, which is our fathers and families, are getting their needs met through us being good servants, good stewards of their time, their stories, and making sure that at the end of the day, they're winning and their kids winning and their families are winning.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that mobilization initiative a little bit. So you'll go into a county which is not organized in terms of its approach to working with fathers. So what role then does OPNFF play in helping to get that county organized around fatherhood?
Yeah, so absolutely. So prior to, what that looks like, one of the things that happened very early on, and I'm all about giving people their roles, is you have James McDonald from Zanesville area, and then Steve Kilpack, from the Cleveland area. They created a county mobilization toolkit. And within that toolkit, it talks about, doing a community assessment of are you in a father-friendly environment? Are the governmental systems father-friendly? Is the faith-based systems father-friendly? Is the social service landscape in those communities father-friendly? And so that's what the community, landscape or community assessment is all about, figuring out what resources are in the community, and are those resources inclusive of fathers? Because that's important. Along with making sure that as we create these county mobilization teams, that it includes, someone from the faith-based community, a governmental entity, law enforcement entity, and social service entity, and a father within themselves, along with some others, as a part of that team. That way you have all these systems coming together to have a singular focus, and that's how do we build assets within a community as it pertains to fathers and families. And so as we build that team, what we start to work towards is why and fatherhood is important within those communities. The other part of that, too, is really truly understanding what potentially are some pain points within some of these communities. I think about, Butler County. I think about Hamilton County. So my own county is Hamilton. We have traditionally, over the last 10 years, had some fairly high infant mortality rates. So when we think about the landscape as it pertains to fathers, what role does fathers play in reducing, infant mortality? And, we play a huge role. I mean, we're in the house with the mom. And, how do we, be there to support, her mental, physical, and social needs, so that we can, birth a healthy child that's going to make, and then that child making it to their first birthday. So that's what the mobilization project is really about, that community scan. And then trying to create some fatherhood event that will take place within that county. But more importantly, when we walk out of that county, what's equally important is making sure that there's some type of sustainability process in which we keep having these conversations about fatherhood. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we may not be able to walk out of that county and now they have a fatherhood program, right? And that's okay. Because that at some point will come later. But what's important is that, we maintain the momentum that potentially should have been gained in those counties about being inclusive of fathers when you have the opportunity to engage them.
So what has been the main drawback? What has been the weak point of the mobilization movement regarding sustainability?
Absolutely. I think I think the major issue, or I'm not going to say the issue, I would say one of the things we have to continue to work on is first and foremost, identifying the champions. Sometimes when we think about these initiatives, they're only as good as the original crew that was involved. Well, we know how social service works because there's a lot of turnover sometimes. And so, again, that goes to keeping that momentum, but also that sustainability. So, how do we make sure that, there are multiple people within a community that can keep that torch burning? And then the sustainability. I mean, the seed money for the mobilization project is $10,000. You receive that at the end of our time of, coaching and working with you on a project or something that you want to have in your community. And so, what we have found since going back to 2011, there are some counties where they have not been able to sustain their county mobilization project simply because there's been turnover amongst the people. And so, I think where the opportunities lie for us is how does OPNFF potentially offer ongoing technical assistance through the continuum? Now, defining the continuum could be, 2 years post receiving the seed money or longer. That's just more discussion we have to have. But I think there has to be some ongoing technical assistance that right now is not funded. And we, as a voluntarily based program, don't have necessarily the capacity to offer that way. But I think that's the true opportunity. And then we have to figure out how to then link each and every county that's went through the mobilization project together so there can be some ongoing peer support as another layer towards sustainability.
Thank you so much for that information. That, of course, I have a firsthand knowledge of a lot of what you're talking about because my county, which is Clark County in Ohio, was in that first cohort in 2011 for the mobilization effort. And we found the biggest weakness is just as you stated. As time goes by, the different partners have turnover on their staff, and so the champions who were there at the beginning, little by little, one by one, they all fade away. And unless there is some paid individual in that county who is the fatherhood champion, then that momentum is sure to fade. And we see that happening over and over again. So that's a challenge that I believe needs to be overcome if we're going to have sustainable mobilizations throughout.
And you see that, Eli, with the the counties that are still invested and have some level of mobilization still going post 5 years from getting the seed money are typically the counties where there is an established fatherhood program within that county. Where we see the momentum drop really quick is counties that don't have a fatherhood program, and they're just doing this as an introductory. And so again, that's why it's also important to, during those conversations, we do try to focus and spend some time talking through sustainability as it relates to where are the other funding opportunities to build potentially a program, from the ground up. Is that local foundations, local United Ways, things of that. Like you have some of these federal grants that come out. And we understand there's challenges. I mean, you think about even with some of these funding streams, they oftentimes want to fund already established programming. I get that. And so, again, a lot of that is going to be at the local level, more than I would say the federal or even the state level. How do we leverage all of the funding opportunities within our community, even if, from a scalability perspective, it's not something on the scale of what Talbot House does, right? If it's just, simply providing some case management related services or some employment services as a startup, and we can continue to build, because then that gives us the opportunity to show that we have something established and we're just at a point we're ready to scale up or build up what we already are currently doing.
All right, good stuff. We're going to take our final break, and when we come back, I'd like to wrap up with you giving fathers who are listening to today's podcast some inspiration, some insight, something to fuel them in their fathering. Yeah. So think about that during this break, and when we come back, Harold Howard is going to offer some inspiration for our dads today. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. I'm Eli Williams, and we'll be back after this short timeout.
Do you know a new father who could benefit from a basic introduction to healthy fathering principles? POPS 101, a free online course consisting of 4 one-hour sessions in English or Spanish, could be perfect for him. POPS 101 lays out practical steps toward becoming the protector, order keeper, provider, and stabilizer his child needs. Learn more at urbanlight.org.
Welcome back. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. We are rounding third and headed for home, as one of my favorite Cincinnati Reds baseball commentators used to say. My guest is Harold Howard, and we are talking fatherhood today. And Harold, you've certainly provided a lot of excellent information for us today and for our listeners about the work that you do at Talbert House and the work of Ohio Practitioners Network for Fathers and Families. That's all very good. I was inspired by your story, and I want to now give you an opportunity to say something encouraging to a dad who's listening, and he's got all of us as dads have our challenges. Nobody has everything figured out. But what would you say to a father who may be struggling right now?
I would just simply say to a father right now, you matter. You matter. And I'm going to say it a third time, you matter. At the end of the day, it's not about, what you have done. It's not about where you have been. It's not about how everybody else view you. You still matter, because in the eyes of your child, you're their father, and you're going to always matter. Being a father, take that with pride. Your presence matter. Again, you can be a father who, may not have the riches of the world. Doesn't matter, because that's not what's important to that child. What's important to that child is your presence, your time, what you pour into them. And so let that be your focus. If you are going through some things in life, let that be your fuel. If you're not, actively involved in your child's life for whatever those reasons may be, let that be your fuel. You're going to always matter. Doesn't matter what society tells you. If they tell you don't matter, you matter. As we grow up, even as a 46-year-old man, who is still blessed to have his father here, when I'm going through the most challenging times in my life, that's who I turn to, because he matters. His role matters. What he has poured into me matters. And then I think about myself as a father. I always wanted to be like him. I still want to be like him. The other day, my daughter and I was having a conversation, and she was like, "You have always been here for me." And that meant the world to me, because there's days when, through work, I'm just unavailable, working late, things of that matter. And as I get older and they get older, and my youngest is now 14, that time goes fast, and to the point I'm trying to slow it down. Take advantage of the moment that you're in. Appreciate them for where they're at in life, whether they're an infant, a toddler, a preteen, whatever that may be. It goes fast. And, I live by the credence that, you can be the most successful person in the world, and success is in the eye of the beholder, in my opinion. At the end of the day, your riches come on the legacy that you leave for your child or children. And so, just be present, be in the moment, understand your value and worth. Don't let anybody tell you different. And love on your kids. When things are not going well and you need to recalibrate, turn to your kids and give them a hug, because they're never going to judge you. They want what's best for you. That's why they're such a blessing. And when we're given those blessings, we just got to take full advantage of it. And then also, I would just say in closing, equally important is, as men, one of the toughest things that we have time, or we ever admit to, is when we need help. If you need help, reach out and get the help that you need. Humble yourself. We all had to do it. Even what we consider the most successful people in the world has had to humble themselves. Reach out to your community. Reach out to people in the community that's all about you and want to see what's best for you. It's okay to need help. Trust and believe it. At 46, I need help. And so own that, get the help you need, because ultimately, the more you put in your cup, the more you can put into your kids' cup. And so just keep mattering, keep pushing forward. And I appreciate you, and I don't even know you. So thank you.
Well, Harold, thank you. That was awesome. I appreciate those kind words. Very, very inspirational and encouraging for dads today. We appreciate you being on the podcast. Thank you so much, Harold.
Thank you. Thanks, Eli. I appreciate it.
And that wraps up today's conversation. Fathering Strong offers many resources, including our weekly Fathering Strong blogs, our podcasts, our devotionals, videos, fatherhood courses, and much more. We invite you to explore the website today. That's fatheringstrong.com, fatheringstrong.com. Thanks again to Mr. Harold Howard. We appreciate him taking the time to talk with us. And we thank you, friends, for being with us today on the podcast. Next time, our guest will be Kevin Munn. Kevin is a pastor, an adoptive parent of 2 girls, and the godfather of a daughter and a son, brand new son, in the Dominican Republic. Oh, wow. So join us then, won't you, for an interesting conversation. In the meantime, may the Lord bless you as you give your child what no one else on earth can, and that is your fully developed father love. And that's Fathering Strong.
Fathering Strong is powered by Urban Light Ministries, a not-for-profit organization serving the needs of families and children for nearly 30 years. Your support helps us continue turning the hearts of fathers to their children while meeting some of the immediate critical needs of struggling families with small children. Contributions of all sizes are welcomed at www.urbanlight.org.
The Fathering Strong podcast is a production of Urban Light Ministries, with technical assistance from the Momentum Group, and Harold Rayford provides the theme music. So thank you for listening.